The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
One God of all people, it is good that we are gathered, even across the miles and diverse landscape of this great state. For there is much and important work to be done. We give thanks for the gifts of this day and all that it holds. For in the midst of this blessings and challenges, you will be present. Help us to be open to where and how it is that your Spirit is already moving, guiding, and calling for greater justice, equity, wholeness, and well-being for all of your people. Bless this legislative body and each of its members. Bless their families and their communities. Bless, too, the legislative staff and all who are a part of this important process. Receive whatever needs and concerns each are carrying in their hearts and on their minds. We pray for the family, friends, and co-workers who grieve the death of Joe Hintze, House Communications Officer and Electrician in the Chief Clerk's office. Gracious God, we pray especially for the people of this great state of Minnesota and the very real concerns and needs that they are facing. We pray for those who awoke this morning in homeless encampments in South Minneapolis, and for those in Otter Tail County and other areas of our state who awoke to the uncertainty of how they will recover from the devastation of recent tornadoes. We pray for small business owners and she who is wondering how to rebuild her business that was destroyed. We pray for families wondering how to keep a roof over their heads once eviction stays are lifted, and for landlords struggling to pay their mortgages with no rental payments coming in. Yes, dear God, there is much and important work to be done, and we often differ on the best way to do it. We come to this work out of very different experiences, understandings, and therefore different perspectives. For the sake of your people and the integrity of this democratic process, help us to recognize and acknowledge how and where the privileged perspectives and voices of some have overshadowed and marginalized the perspectives and voices of others. God, guide and bless this House of Representatives, the work that they will do, and all of the beautiful and diverse people who only together are the wonderful state of Minnesota. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Kevin Schill from Recovery Response. He's the Recovery Response Coordinator at Twin Cities United Methodist Churches. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. A copy of the proclamation from the governor is on each member's desk and also online. Members, a reminder, since it's been almost a month since we were together, when the clerk takes the roll, please state your name, your city or township very clearly and present. The clerk will take the roll.
Acom.
Lake Itasca Township, present.
Acom, Lake Itasca Township, present. Albright. St. Paul, present. Anderson,
Barsness Township, present.
Barsness Township, present. Backer,
Browns Valley, present.
Browns Valley, present. Bonner,
St. Paul, present.
St. Paul, present. Barr, St. Paul, present. Baker,
Wilmer, present.
present. Becker Finn,
St. Paul, present.
St. Paul, present. Bennett,
Albert Lee, present.
present. Bernardi,
St. Paul, present.
St. Paul, present. Bierman,
St. Paul, present.
St. Paul, present. Bow, Bow. Brand.
Brand, St. Peter, present.
Brand, St. Peter, present. Cantrell.
Cantrell, St. Paul, present.
Cantrell, St. Paul, present. Carlson A.
Carlson A, St. Paul, present.
Carlson A, St. Paul, present. Carlson L.
Carlson L, St. Paul, present.
Carlson L, St. Paul, present. Christensen.
Christensen, St. Paul, present.
Christensen, St. Paul, present. Claflin.
Claflin, St. Paul, present.
Claflin, St. Paul, present. Considine.
Considine, Mankato, present.
Considine, Mankato, present. Daniels.
Daniels, Faribault, present.
Daniels, Faribault, present. Doubt. Present. Doubt, St. Paul, present. Davids. Davids, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Dabney, St. Paul, present.
Davney, St. Paul, present. Dean.
Dean, St. Paul, present.
Dean, St. Paul, present. Damath. Damath, St. Paul, present. Detmer.
Forest Lake, present.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present. Drazkowski.
Druskowski, St. Paul, present.
Drazkowski, St. Paul, present. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson, Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, St. Paul, present.
Elkins, St. Paul, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Fabian.
Fabian, St. Paul, present.
Fabian, St. Paul, present. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Franzen.
Franson, Alexandria, present.
Franzen, Alexandria, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, St. Paul, present.
Freiberg, St. Paul, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez, St. Paul, present.
Gomez, St. Paul, present. Green.
Green, Foston, present.
Green, Foston, present. Grossel.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, St. Paul, present.
Gruenhagen, St. Paul, present. Gunther.
Gunther, Fairmont, present.
Gunther, Fairmount, present. Haley.
Haley, Red Wing, present.
Haley, Red Wing, present. Halverson. Halverson, St. Paul, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, Mountain Lake, present.
Hamilton, Mountain Lake, present. Hanson.
Hampton, Harmony, present.
Hanson, Harmony, present. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Houseman.
Houseman, St. Paul, present.
Houseman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich, Anoka, present.
Heinrich, Anoka, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present. Her.
Her, St. Paul, present.
Her, St. Paul, present. Hertos.
Hertos, Greenfield, present.
Hertos, Greenfield, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard. Howard, St. Paul, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Johnson.
Johnson, Paul.
Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan, St. Paul, present.
Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens. Jurgens, St. Paul, present. Keel.
Keel, Hammond Township, present.
Keel, Hammond Township, present. Cleveland.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present. Cagle. Cagle. Katiza-Wattoon.
Katiza-Wattoon, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza-Wattoon, Eden Prairie, present. Cosnick.
Cosnick, St. Paul, present.
Cosnick, St. Paul, present. Creeshaw. Creeshaw. Kunish-Podine.
Kunish-Podine, St. Paul, present.
Kunish-Podine, St. Paul, present. Lehman.
Lehman, Cohasset, present.
Lehman, Cohasset, present. Lee.
Lee, St. Paul, present.
Lee, St. Paul, present. Lesh.
Lesh, St. Paul, present.
Lesh, St. Paul, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lean.
Lean, Moorhead, present.
Lean, Moorhead, present. Lilly.
Lily, St. Paul, present.
Lilly, St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, St. Paul, present.
Lippert, St. Paul, present. Lislegard.
Lislegard, St. Paul, present.
Lislegard, St. Paul, present. Long. Long, St. Paul, present. Lucero.
Lucero, Dayton, present.
Lucero, Dayton, present. Lewick.
Lewick, Aiken, present.
Lewick, Aiken, present. Mahoney.
Mahoney, St. Paul, present.
Mahoney, St. Paul, present. Mann.
Man, Northfield, present.
Mann, Northfield, present. Mariani.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present. Marquardt.
Markwart, Dunn Township, present.
Marquardt, Dunn Township, present. Mason. Mason. McDonald. McDonald. Mecklin.
McDonald Township, present.
McDonald.
McDonald, Delano, present.
McDonald, Delano, present. Mecklin.
Hold on.
Mecklen, Becker Township, present.
Mecklin, Becker Township, present. Miller.
Miller, St. Paul, present.
Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller.
Moeller, Shoreview, present.
Moeller, Shoreview, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Munson.
Munson, St. Paul, present.
Munson, St. Paul, present. Murphy.
Murphy, Hermantown, present.
Murphy, Hermantown, present. Nash. Nash, St. Paul, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., St. Paul, present.
Nelson M., St. Paul, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., Rapid City, present.
Nelson N., Rapid City, present. New. New, St. Paul, present. Noor. Noor, St. Paul, present. Nornis.
Nornis, Fergus Falls, present.
Nornis, Fergus Falls, present. Novotny.
Novotny, Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll, St. Paul, present. Olson.
Olson, St. Paul, present.
Olson, St. Paul, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Purcell.
Rochelle, St. Paul, present.
Purcell, St. Paul, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, Wasika, present.
Petersburg, Wasika, present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poppy.
Poppy, St. Paul, present.
Poppy, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, Lake Shore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, St. Paul, present.
Pryor, St. Paul, present. Quam. Quam, St. Paul, present. Richardson.
Richardson, St. Paul, present.
Richardson, St. Paul, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Runbeck.
Runback, Circle Pines, present.
Runbeck, Circle Pines, present. Sandell.
Sandell, St. Paul, present.
Sandell, St. Paul, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, St. Paul, present.
Sandsted, St. Paul, present. Sauk. Sauk. Schumacher.
Schumacher, St. Paul, present.
Schumacher, St. Paul, present. Schultz. Excused. Scott.
Scott, Andover, present.
Scott, Andover, present. Stevenson.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski.
Swazinski, Wilmer, present.
Swazinski, Wilmer, present. Tabke.
Tabke, Shakopee, present.
Tabke, Shakopee, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Cloud, present.
Tice, St. Cloud, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present. Erdahl.
Erdahl, Axton Township, present.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present. Vang.
Vang, St. Paul, present.
Vang, St. Paul, present. Vogel.
Vogel, Elko, Newmarket, present.
Vogel, Elko, Newmarket, present. Wagenius.
Wagenius, Solom Township, present.
Wagenius, Solom Township, present. Waslewick.
Wadsworth, St. Paul, present.
Waslewick, St. Paul, present. West.
West Blaine, present.
West, Blaine, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Walgamot.
Wolgamott, St. Paul, present.
Walgamot, St. Paul, present. Zhang Jie.
Xiong J, St. Paul, present.
Zhang Jie, St. Paul, present. Zhang Ti.
Zhang T, St. Paul, present.
Zhang Ti, St. Paul, present. Joachim.
Joachim, St. Paul, present.
Joachim, St. Paul, present. Speaker Hortman. Speaker Hortman, St. Paul, present. Bo.
Bo, St. Paul, present.
Bo, St. Paul, present. Cagle.
Cagle, St. Paul, present.
Cagle, St. Paul, present. Creshaw. Creshaw. Mason.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present. Mason.
Mason, St. Paul, present.
Mason, St. Paul, present. Sauk.
Oh, Rochester, present.
Sauk, Rochester, present.
A quorum is present, and pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 2018, Section 3.073, I declare the House organized for this special session. Representative Winkler offers the following motion. The Chief Clerk will read the motion.
Winkler moves that the Chief Clerk be and is hereby instructed to inform the Senate and the Governor by message that the House of Representatives is now duly organized pursuant to law for this second special session.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, this is a ceremonial motion. I ask for your support.
Any discussion to the ceremonial motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. We don't have any messages from the Senate? Okay. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 1 through 62.
First reading, House Files 1 through 62. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of any non-controversial motions we might have, if any, online.
House Resolution Number 1, introduced by Richardson, a House resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. The House resolution is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Introduction of House Concurrent Resolution Number 1, a House Concurrent Resolution relating to Minnesota peacetime emergency. The resolution is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Members, at this time, we will proceed to a recognition of the loss of Joe Hintze. We lost a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives family over the time since we left and since our reconvening. And we have a number of members who would like to read a resolution, and it is my understanding that after we read the resolution that we will take a moment of silence to recognize Joe's passing. And I believe that the first member of the House who will begin the recognition is Representative Tu Zhang. Representative Tu Zhang. We will proceed to Representative Fabian. And Representative Fabian, if you can begin the resolution, I would appreciate it. Representative Fabian. We appear to be having a little bit of technical difficulties with our members. I would ask Representative Winkler to read the portion that Representative Zhang was assigned, and then we'll move to Representative Doubt to read the portion we were going to go to next. Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a House resolution honoring the life of Joe Hintze of the Chief Clerk's Office. Whereas Joe Hintze, a proud St. Paul native, passed away peacefully on July 2nd, 2020, surrounded by family, and whereas Joe worked in the Chief Clerk's office and was hired as the House Communications Officer and Electrician on February 12, 2018, and
Representative Doubt.
Thank you. Whereas as House Communications Officer, Joe's responsibilities include maintaining and operating the House voting system, the House audio recording equipment systems, and the public address systems on the House floor and in the committee rooms, and maintaining the electrical equipment and lighting systems for the House chambers. And whereas Joe followed in his father Ernie's footsteps, who served as the House Communications Officer for over 30 years. And
Representative Halverson.
Whereas Joe worked for the House from 1984 to 1990 as an independent contractor and installation and repair technician. And whereas Joe worked on the Capitol Restoration Project as a general foreman and electrician subcontractor for Gephardt Electric from 2014 to 2016. And whereas Joe regarded his job with the House as his dream job. And
Representative Jurgens.
Whereas Joe was the go-to person for all House departments in numerous ways, including the Capitol Restoration Project and the current remodel of the State Office Building. And whereas Joe always exhibited a friendly and positive can-do attitude, had a warm and engaging personality, was admired and respected by his fellow employees, and always went above and beyond to help others. And
Representative Doubt.
whereas Joe was a huge sports fan, a vintage car enthusiast, an avid bowler, and could never pass up watching a new sci-fi show or movie. His greatest passion in the summer months was spending time at Lake Edward and Brainerd with his family. Joe will be greatly missed in the House chambers and around the Capitol. And whereas Joe was a trusted and loyal husband, father, and friend, whose family included his wife Elizabeth and their 3 children, Bethany, Anthony, and Jessica. Now therefore,
Representative Winkler.
be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the State of Minnesota that it honors Joe Hintze for his dedicated and loyal service to the House and extends its deepest condolences to his family, friends, co-workers, and all who knew him. Be it further resolved that the Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives is directed to prepare and enroll a copy of this resolution to be authenticated by his signature and that of the Speaker, and to transmit it to Joe Hintze's family.
Members, please join me for a moment of silence to recognize Joe Hintze and his service to our chamber. Announcements. Representative Marquardt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
Grand Forks Police Officer Cody Holte died in service to his community on May 27th at the age of 29. In addition to being a member of the Grand Forks Police Department, he was currently serving as a first lieutenant in the North Dakota National Guard and had been a member of the U.S. Army. Officer Holte grew up in Halstead, Minnesota, which is in the district that I represent, and graduated from Norman County West High School. He also graduated from Minnesota State University at Moorhead with a degree in criminal justice. Officer Holte is survived by his wife Amanda and son Gunnar and a very loving family and friends. And so, Madam Speaker and members, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in honor of the service of Officer Cody Holte.
Members, please rise and join me for a moment of silence to recognize the fallen officer. Further announcements. Any announcements? Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 5 p.m. Tuesday, July 14th, 2020.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 5 p.m. Tuesday, July 14th. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until Tuesday, July 14th at 5 p.m.